My own son called me pathetic in front of 300 people at his MBA graduation ceremony. I'm Walter Chen, and I've spent 40 years building something my son never bothered to ask about. He announced to his Harvard Business School classmates that his embarrassing old man needed to stop showing up to important events, posted it on LinkedIn for his 50,000 professional connections to see, and told me I was holding back his career prospects.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
What he didn't know was that the $2 million trust fund he'd been bragging about to his fiance's wealthy family wasn't actually his yet. I was the trustee with complete control, and by the time his graduation lunch ended, that trust fund had a very different future. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I just excused myself to the restroom and made 2 phone calls. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this story starts 4 decades ago, when I made a promise to myself about the difference between building a legacy and raising someone who understands the value of anything. That promise would cost my son more than he ever calculated. Most people look at me and see exactly what my son Nathan sees. A 68-year-old man who drives a 2008 Honda Accord with a dented bumper and 220,000 miles on the odometer. Someone who wears the same 3 sport coats from Kohl's that I've had for a decade and brings homemade egg rolls to potlucks instead of catered appetizers. Nathan Chen, 29 years old, Harvard MBA, Goldman Sachs analyst, and absolutely convinced that his grandfather's generation doesn't understand modern wealth. "Grandpa, you literally dress like a community college math teacher," he told me last year at Thanksgiving. "Melissa's parents are going to think I come from nothing." Melissa Ashford, daughter of a Manhattan real estate developer, $400 million family portfolio, drives a $180,000 Porsche Taycan, and wears jewelry that costs more than most people's houses. The first sign I was losing my grandson happened 8 months ago. He started referring to his trust fund as my liquid assets in conversations, then my investment capital, then just my money. "When Melissa and I get married, we'll obviously need to access the trust fund early," he announced over dim sum in Chinatown. "I'm 29, Grandpa. The original term said 30, but that's just arbitrary. You can release it now." Arbitrary. That word stuck with me. Like the age I'd carefully chosen after watching him grow up had no thought behind it. The second sign came when he posted on LinkedIn about generational wealth transfer. The caption read, "Time for the older generation to recognize that holding on to control isn't the same as providing guidance. Trust your successors." The comments were full of other young professionals agreeing. One person wrote, "Boomers need to understand that their kids are more financially sophisticated than they were." Nathan screenshotted the most supportive comments and texted them to me. "See, even industry leaders agree. Times have changed." I never responded to those texts. I just saved them. What Nathan doesn't know is that I've been watching his LinkedIn posts for months. Watching him talk about his financial strategies and investment philosophy, watching him share articles about how his generation is smarter about money than their grandparents ever were. In his world, he earned his Harvard MBA through pure merit. I was just the lucky grandfather who happened to have some money set aside. "My grandfather came from mainland China in the 1960s, I heard him tell Melissa's father at a charity gala last spring. Very traditional mindset. Doesn't really understand modern portfolio theory or growth strategies. He's more of a save every penny type. Old school immigrant mentality." Old school immigrant mentality, as if the foundation he was standing on had built itself. Melissa's father found this charming. "It's actually quite impressive that Nathan has become so financially literate despite his background," he told his wife within earshot of me. "Really pulled himself up." Pulled himself up from the full-ride Harvard MBA scholarship I'd funded through an anonymous donation, from the $3,000 monthly living stipend I'd been sending since he was 22, from the $85,000 I'd quietly paid off in undergraduate student loans so he could graduate debt-free. But in Nathan's version of his life story, all of this had somehow manifested through his own exceptional abilities. But the breaking point wasn't the LinkedIn posts or the dismissive comments or even the entitlement. It was what happened at his graduation ceremony 2 weeks ago. I'd flown from San Francisco to Boston, taken the subway from the airport because parking in Cambridge is expensive, and arrived at Harvard Business School's graduation venue in my Navy sport coat from Kohl's. I was proud. My grandson was graduating from one of the best business schools in the world. I'd brought my old Canon camera to take photos. Nathan saw me in the crowd before the ceremony started. His face went tight with what looked like embarrassment. He walked over quickly, glancing around to see if anyone had noticed me yet. "Grandpa, what are you doing here?" "I came to watch you graduate." "I told you that you didn't need to come. You told me the ceremony was at 2 p.m. and that family was welcome. I thought you'd reconsider." "Why would I reconsider watching my grandson graduate?" Nathan's voice dropped lower. "Grandpa, look around. Look at the other families here. These are serious people. Venture capitalists, CEOs, managing directors. Melissa's father flew in on a private jet, and you took the subway." "I took the subway because it's efficient and environmentally responsible." "Nathan, are you embarrassed that I'm here?" He didn't answer directly. "I just think maybe you'd be more comfortable watching the live stream from home. You have the link, right?" "Nathan, I flew across the country to be here." "I know, and I appreciate that, but Melissa's family has specific expectations about the image we're presenting. We're trying to position ourselves in certain circles." "The image we are presenting," as if I was damaging his brand by existing. "What if I promised to sit in the back and not talk to anyone?" Nathan sighed, in the way people sigh when they're dealing with someone they consider unreasonable. "Fine. But please, just don't introduce yourself to anyone as my grandfather. If people ask, just say you're a family friend." I sat in the back row during the ceremony. I watched Nathan walk across the stage to receive his diploma. I took photos with my old camera, the same one I'd used to photograph his high school graduation, his college graduation, every important moment of his life. After the ceremony, there was a reception on the lawn. I stood near the refreshment table, trying to be invisible like Nathan had asked me. I watched him laugh with his classmates, watched Melissa's parents arrive with an entourage, watched Nathan introduce them to his professors and prominent alumni. Then I heard it. Nathan was standing with a group of his closest friends from the MBA program, all of them holding glasses of champagne, all of them celebrating. One of his friends, a guy named Alex, noticed me across the lawn. "Hey Nathan, who's the old guy in the Kohl sport coat? Is he with the catering staff?" The group laughed. Nathan glanced over at me, and I saw him make a decision. "That's my grandfather. He insisted on coming even though I told him this wasn't really his scene." Alex raised his eyebrows. "Your grandfather? The one with the trust fund you mentioned?" Nathan's voice got quieter, but not quiet enough. "Yeah, that's him. Look, he's a sweet old man, but honestly, he's pretty pathetic. Still thinks saving pennies and taking the subway makes him some kind of financial genius. Doesn't understand that wealth is about leverage and growth, not hoarding cash in low-yield accounts." The group laughed again. One of the women, someone named Jennifer, joined in. "Oh my God, is he the one you said still uses a flip phone?" Nathan grinned. "Yep. And he thinks email is too complicated, so he still sends actual letters with stamps." Jennifer shook her head. "That's so sad. Like imagine living through the entire digital revolution and learning nothing." Nathan raised his glass. "Well, the good news is that once I get access to the trust fund next year, I can finally manage that money properly, put it into some actual growth vehicles instead of whatever extremely conservative bombs he probably has it sitting in." His friend Alex clinked glasses with him. "Dude, you're going to 10x that money in 5 years." Nathan smiled. "That's the plan. Sometimes you just have to wait for the older generation to get out of the way." I stood there, holding my paper plate with some cheese and crackers on it, listening to my grandson call me pathetic to his Harvard friends, and something inside me went very quiet and very clear.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I set down my plate, walked calmly toward the parking lot, and pulled out my phone. The first call was to Margaret Yip, my attorney for 30 years. She answered immediately. "Walter, congratulations on Nathan's graduation. How was the ceremony?" "Margaret, I need you to prepare some documents, and I need them by Monday morning." "What kind of documents?" "Trust modification papers. The Nathan Chen Trust. I want to restructure the terms and update the trustee provisions." "Walter, what happened?" "Just prepare the papers. I'll explain everything Monday. But Margaret, make sure the language is absolutely ironclad. This is going to be contested." The second call was to David Park, my financial advisor and the president of Chen Family Investments. David answered on the second ring. "Walter, is everything all right? You usually don't call on weekends." "David, I need you to pull the complete portfolio breakdown for the Nathan Chen Trust. Every asset, every account,
The graduation lunch was at a restaurant called Harvest in Harvard Square, one of those places where the menu doesn't list prices and the wine list requires a sommelier to navigate. Nathan had made reservations for 12 people, his closest friends from the MBA program, Melissa and her parents, and apparently me, though I suspected my invitation was more obligation than desire. I arrived 10 minutes early, still wearing my Kohl sport coat, still carrying my old Canon camera. The hostess looked at me with the expression people in expensive restaurants reserve for customers they're not sure can afford to be there. "I'm here for the Chen party," I said. She checked her list. "You must be Walter. Right this way." She led me to a private dining room where Nathan and Melissa were already seated with her parents, Christopher and Victoria Ashford, Manhattan real estate royalty, both wearing watches that probably cost more than my car. Nathan saw me enter, and his smile faltered for just a second before he recovered. "Grandpa, you made it!" "I told you I'd be here." Nathan stood and made introductions. "Christopher, Victoria, this is my grandfather, Walter Chen." Christopher extended his hand with the firm grip of someone who's closed billion-dollar deals. "Walter, Nathan's told us so much about you." I shook his hand. "I hope some of it was accurate." Victoria laughed politely. "Nathan says you're retired. What did you do before retirement?" "I taught mathematics at San Francisco State University for 35 years. "How wonderful! Teaching is such important work." She said it the way wealthy people say important work when they mean work that doesn't make money. "And you live in San Francisco?" "In the Sunset District. Small house, but it's paid off." Christopher nodded approvingly. "Smart to own property in the Bay Area. Even a modest home there must be worth quite a bit now. It's appreciated some over the years." The rest of the party arrived over the next 15 minutes. Nathan's MBA friends, all of them wearing clothes that cost more than I spent on clothing in a year, all of them talking about job offers from consulting firms and investment banks and tech companies. I sat at the far end of the table next to someone's girlfriend who spent the entire meal on her phone. The conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. They talked about disruption and unicorns and cap tables and exit strategies. They talked about people I'd never heard of and companies that apparently everyone in their world knew about. Nathan held court at the center of the table, telling a story about how he'd negotiated his signing bonus at Goldman Sachs. "I just told them that I had competing offers and that I needed to see a number that reflected my value proposition," he said. "You can't be afraid to walk away from the table." His friends nodded appreciatively. "That's alpha behavior," one of them said. "You trained him well," Christopher said to Nathan. "Real estate's the same way. Never take the first offer. Never show that you need the deal more than they do." Nathan raised his wine glass. "To leverage." The table echoed him. "To leverage." I sipped my water and said nothing. Midway through lunch, Christopher Ashford turned his attention to me. "So, Walter, Nathan mentioned you set up a trust fund for him. That's very generous. I wanted to make sure he had some security. Some security? Christopher smiled. Nathan said it's substantial. You must have been quite the saver on a teacher's salary. I was careful with money. Victoria leaned in, interested now. It's remarkable what the older generation was able to accomplish through discipline and sacrifice, so different from today's instant gratification culture. I suppose we had different values. Nathan jumped in, his voice carrying that edge I'd heard earlier. Grandpa's generation believed in putting everything into savings bonds and CDs. Very conservative approach, very low returns, but very safe. Christopher nodded. Nothing wrong with safety, especially as you get older, but you're right that the opportunity cost can be significant. Nathan warmed to his theme. Exactly. I've actually been trying to explain to Grandpa that with my MBA and my position at Goldman Sachs, I could probably generate much better returns on that trust fund capital. Basic portfolio theory suggests diversification across growth equities, alternative investments, maybe some cryptocurrency exposure. Christopher looked impressed. You're thinking like an investor, not a saver. That's the difference between wealth preservation and wealth creation. Nathan glanced at me. But Grandpa's pretty attached to his conservative strategy. I think he's worried I'll lose it all in some risky venture. I'm not worried about that, I said quietly. The table went silent for a moment, everyone suddenly aware that the old man at the end had spoken. Nathan's smile was tight. Well, you've certainly expressed concerns about my financial judgment. Have I? When? Nathan looked uncomfortable. You know, general comments about being careful with money, about not spending beyond my means. I've never said anything about your financial judgment, Nathan. I've asked questions about your expenses and your plans, but I've never criticized your judgment. Because, honestly, I've never seen evidence of your judgment. I've only seen evidence of your confidence. The table got very quiet. Christopher Ashford set down his wine glass. Alex, one of Nathan's friends, tried to lighten the mood. Walter's just being cautious. That's what grandparents do, right? Nathan's face was red. Grandpa, this isn't really the time or place. For what? For discussing financial philosophy? You've been discussing it for the past 20 minutes. I was just offering a different perspective. Nathan's voice got sharp. Your perspective is that I should leave money sitting in bonds earning 2% when I could be generating 10 or 15% returns. That's not a different perspective. That's just being afraid of modern markets. I took a sip of water. Nathan, do you know what the trust fund is currently invested in? Nathan waved his hand dismissively. Conservative bonds, I assume, money market accounts, maybe some blue-chip dividend stocks if you're feeling adventurous. Do you actually know, or are you assuming? I'm making an educated guess based on your risk profile. So you don't know. Nathan looked at Melissa, then at her parents, clearly embarrassed. Grandpa, I don't have access to the account statements because you're the trustee. That's correct. So maybe instead of criticizing investments you know nothing about, you could tell me what they actually are. I pulled out my phone and opened an app. Nathan watched me fumble with the screen. Do you need help with that, Grandpa? Technology isn't really your strong suit. I found what I was looking for and set the phone on the table facing Nathan. This is the Chen Family Investments Portal. Real-time tracking of all family trust accounts. Nathan leaned forward to look at the screen. His face changed as he read. That's not possible. What's not possible? The numbers. Those can't be right. I picked up my phone and read from the screen. Chen Family Trust. Current value as of today, $2,847,392. Seems right to me. Nathan grabbed my phone. Grandpa, this says the trust has holdings in Tesla, Amazon, Google, Bitcoin, and a dozen venture capital funds. This says you have equity positions in 3 different startups. This is an aggressive growth portfolio. I looked at him calmly. Is it? Because 30 seconds ago, you told everyone at this table that I had everything in conservative bonds. Nathan scrolled through the holdings, his face getting redder. You're in crypto. You're in crypto and you never told me. Why would I tell you? It's a trust fund. You don't get statements until you're the beneficiary. But you let me think you didn't understand modern investing. I never said I didn't understand it. You assumed I didn't understand it. Christopher Ashford was leaning over to see the screen phone. Walter, this is quite a sophisticated portfolio. Who manages this for you? I do. Christopher looked skeptical. You personally select these investments? I personally select them, yes, with advice from my financial team, but final decisions are mine. Nathan was still staring at the phone. You bought Bitcoin in 2015? The purchase history shows you bought Bitcoin when it was under $300. Do you have any idea what that's worth now? I have a general idea, yes. That's why I bought it. Nathan looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. But you said cryptocurrency was too volatile. You said it was speculation. I said it was volatile. Volatile doesn't mean bad. It means you need to understand what you're buying and only invest what you can afford to lose. I could afford to lose it. The table was completely silent now. Everyone was watching Nathan realize that everything he had assumed about his grandfather was wrong. Melissa's father spoke up. Walter, I have to say I'm impressed. This is the portfolio of someone who understands risk management and growth strategy. Nathan found his voice. But you drive a 2008 Honda. You shop at Kohl's. You took the subway to my graduation. I do all those things, yes. Why? Because I don't need to prove my wealth by displaying it. The money is a tool, not a costume. Nathan's friend Jennifer, the one who had made fun of my flip phone earlier, spoke up. But Mr. Chen, don't you want to enjoy your money? I do enjoy it. I enjoy knowing my grandson will have financial security. I enjoy funding scholarships for math students who can't afford college. I enjoy watching my investments grow. Those things bring me considerably more joy than a luxury car would. Nathan wasn't listening. He was still scrolling through the investment portal on my phone. Grandpa, this shows you have holdings worth over $12 million across all accounts. Not just my trust fund, other investments, family holdings. I've been investing for 40 years, Nathan. Compound growth is powerful when you give it time. But you live like you're barely getting by. I live below my means.
The lunch continued, but the energy at the table had fundamentally shifted. Nathan kept glancing at my phone, which I had calmly placed back in my jacket pocket. His friends were looking at him differently now. The confident MBA graduate who'd been holding court about financial strategy 20 minutes ago suddenly seemed less certain. Victoria Ashford broke the silence. Walter, I'm curious. If you don't mind me asking, how did a mathematics professor accumulate this level of wealth? Compound interest, I said simply. Time in the market, not timing the market. I started investing the year I got my first teaching position. Every month, 20% of my paycheck went straight into investments before I paid any other bills. I lived on the remaining 80%. Christopher leaned forward. For 40 years? For 42 years, actually. I started when I was 26. Nathan found his voice again. But, Grandpa, your house, your car. You live like someone who's struggling. No, Nathan. I live like someone who doesn't need external validation. There's a difference. I turned to face him directly. You told your friends earlier that I was pathetic, that I think saving pennies makes me a financial genius. You said you were waiting for my generation to get out of the way. The color drained from Nathan's face. Grandpa, I didn't mean... I was standing 15 feet away from you on the lawn after the ceremony. I heard every word. Melissa touched Nathan's arm, but he pulled away slightly. The table had gone completely silent again. Even the girlfriend who'd been on her phone was watching now. You called me pathetic, I continued, my voice steady, because I drove a Honda and took the subway, because I wear sport coats from Kohl's, because in your mind, wealth should be displayed, not built. You assumed that because I didn't perform wealth, I didn't have it. And more importantly, you assumed that I didn't understand it. Nathan's jaw was tight. I shouldn't have said those things. No, you shouldn't have. But what concerns me more than what you said is what it reveals about how you think. You told Christopher and Victoria that I didn't understand modern portfolio theory.
You've been telling Melissa's family for months that I'm a sweet old man with an old-school immigrant mentality who doesn't understand how money works in today's world." Christopher Ashford cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Nathan, is this true?" Nathan looked down at his plate. "I may have said some things that were inaccurate." Inaccurate. That's one word for it. Another word might be dishonest. You've built an entire narrative about pulling yourself up despite your background. You told Melissa's father at the charity gala that you became financially literate despite me, not because of me. Melissa spoke up for the first time. "Nathan, you said your grandfather didn't help with Harvard. You said you got in on your own merit." "I did get in on my own merit," Nathan said defensively. I pulled an envelope from my inside jacket pocket and set it on the table. This is a receipt from Harvard University's Office of Financial Aid. It shows a $250,000 anonymous donation made in your name 7 years ago. The donation was structured as a scholarship fund that just happened to cover exactly your tuition, fees, and living expenses for 2 years. Nathan stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "You never told me." "I never asked. You were so proud of your full ride that I didn't want to take that away from you. I thought you'd earned the education regardless of who paid for it. I thought watching you succeed would be enough." "Grandpa, I'm not finished." I pulled out a second envelope. "This is a payment record showing the $85,000 I paid to clear your undergraduate student loans. You told everyone you'd graduated debt-free because you'd been financially savvy with summer internships. But the truth is, I paid those loans the day after your college graduation." Jennifer, Nathan's friend, whispered something to Alex. Nathan heard it and his face flushed darker. "And this," I pulled out a third envelope, "is a bank statement showing the $3,000 monthly transfers I've been making to your account since you were 22. That's $252,000 over 7 years. You told Melissa's parents you'd saved aggressively from your analyst salary. But Nathan, your entire lifestyle has been subsidized by the pathetic old man who takes the subway." Christopher Ashford was looking at Nathan with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or reassessment. "The trust fund was supposed to teach you something," I said quietly. "It was supposed to give you security, yes, but also humility, the knowledge that you were standing on a foundation someone else built. Instead, it taught you entitlement. It taught you that you deserved wealth simply because you existed." Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you going to do?" I stood up from the table and put my phone and the envelopes back in my jacket. "I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. I'm going to let you build your own foundation. The papers will be ready Monday morning. The trust fund restructuring is already in motion." "Wait," Nathan stood up too. "What does it mean, restructuring?" "It means, Nathan, that you're about to learn the difference between inheriting wealth and earning it. I'll explain everything on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your graduation lunch." I walked out of that private dining room, leaving behind $300 in cash to cover my portion of the meal, because unlike my grandson, I always pay my own way. The subway back to the airport was quiet and efficient, just like always.
Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after you've made a decision you know is right, even if it's painful. I was sitting in Margaret Yip's office by 8:30 a.m., 20 minutes before our scheduled appointment. Her assistant brought me coffee in a real ceramic mug, not the paper cups most offices use now. Margaret had been my attorney since 1995, handling everything from my will to property transactions to the trust fund documents I'd created when Nathan was born. She walked in at exactly 8:50, carrying a leather portfolio thick with documents. Margaret was 72, sharp as ever, with silver hair cut in a precise bob and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. "Walter," she said, sitting across from me, "I've prepared everything you requested. But before we go through these documents, I need to ask you one more time if you're certain about this." "I'm certain." "You understand that once these modifications are filed and Nathan is notified, there's no walking this back without significant legal complications." "I understand." Margaret opened the portfolio and pulled out the first set of documents. All right, let's go through what we've done. The original Nathan Chen Trust was established in 1996, with you as the grantor and trustee. The trust was irrevocable, with Nathan as the sole beneficiary, scheduled to receive full control at age 30, which would be next April. Correct. The trust document included a provision that allowed you, as trustee, to modify the terms under specific circumstances related to the beneficiary's character, judgment, or fitness to receive the funds. This is Clause 7.3, subsection B. Do you remember including this? I nodded. I insisted on it. My attorney at the time said it was unusual, but I told him I'd seen too many trust fund kids destroy themselves with money they weren't ready to handle. That clause is what allows us to do what we're about to do. Margaret pulled out a second document. I've prepared a trust modification that restructures the distribution terms. Instead of a lump sum transfer at age 30, Nathan will now receive the funds according to a milestone-based system. Explain the milestones. Margaret put on her reading glasses. Milestone 1. Nathan must maintain continuous employment in his chosen field for 24 consecutive months, with performance reviews submitted to the trustee every 6 months. Upon completion, he receives 10% of the trust value, which would be approximately $284,000 based on current valuation. Correct. Milestone 2. Nathan must create and maintain a charitable giving program where he personally volunteers at least 5 hours per week at a nonprofit organization of his choice. Upon completion, he receives another 10%, teaching him that wealth comes with responsibility. Milestone 3. Nathan must live for 18 consecutive months on a budget equal to the median household income in his city of residence, with all expenses documented and submitted monthly. This teaches him to live within means and understand financial constraint. I smiled slightly. That one's gonna hurt. Milestone 4. Nathan must complete a comprehensive financial literacy program that you will design, covering topics including risk management, long-term planning, and the difference between building wealth and displaying wealth. He must pass a written examination administered by a third-party financial educator. How long do I have to design this program? You have 60 days from the filing date. I'd suggest making it rigorous but fair. Margaret turned to the next page. Milestone 5. Nathan must write a detailed account of how he plans to use the trust funds, including specific financial goals, investment strategies, and charitable intentions. This account must be at least 25 pages and demonstrate genuine understanding of financial responsibility. And if he completes all 5 milestones? He receives the remaining 70% of the trust, which would be approximately $2 million at current valuation. But Walter, here's the critical part. Each milestone must be completed sequentially. He can't work on multiple milestones simultaneously, and he has a maximum of 7 years from the notification date to complete all milestones. What happens if he doesn't complete them in 7 years? Margaret's expression was serious. Well, then the trust transfers to the alternative beneficiaries you've designated. I have that list here. You've chosen the San Francisco State University Mathematics Scholarship Fund, the Asian American Community Foundation, and the East Bay Food Bank. The funds would be split equally among the 3. I sat back in my chair. So, Nathan has a choice. He can prove he understands the value of money and responsibility, or $2 million goes to charity. Essentially, yes. But Walter, I need to warn you, Nathan is going to fight this. He could argue that you're acting as a trustee in bad faith, that this is punitive rather than protective. Do you think he'd win that argument? Given the clause you built into the original trust, given the documentation of his behavior and statements, and given that the milestones are reasonable and achievable, no, I don't think he'd win. But he could make the process expensive and ugly. Let him try. I have documentation of everything.
The LinkedIn posts, the comments at graduation that witnesses heard, the text messages where he demanded early access to the trust, the conversations where he misrepresented me to Melissa's family. You've been building a case. I've been watching my grandson reveal his character. I was hoping I was wrong about what I was seeing. Margaret pulled out the final document. This is the notification letter. Once you sign these modifications, Nathan will receive this letter via certified mail and email. He'll have 30 days to respond or contest. The 7-year clock starts the day he receives notification. I picked up the pen Margaret had placed on the desk. It was heavy, expensive, the kind of pen people use to sign important documents. Before I sign this, tell me honestly, Margaret, am I being cruel? Am I punishing my grandson for being young and stupid? Margaret took off her reading glasses. Walter, I've known you for 30 years. You're one of the most generous people I've ever met. You've put 3 other people's kids through college with anonymous scholarships. You funded community programs and helped families in crisis and never asked for recognition. This isn't about cruelty. This is about love. You're giving Nathan something more valuable than $2 million. What's that? A chance to earn it, a chance to understand where it came from, and a chance to become the man you hoped he'd be instead of the man he's becoming. I signed the documents, all of them. My signature was steady. When will Nathan receive the notification? The courier will deliver it Wednesday morning to his apartment in New York. He'll sign for it personally. And then? And then, Walter, we'll see what your grandson is really made of. I left Margaret's office at 10:15 a.m. My phone had 7 missed calls from Nathan. I didn't return any of them yet. Not yet. He'd understand everything soon enough.
Nathan received the notification on Wednesday morning at 9:47 a.m. I know the exact time because my phone rang at 9:52. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9:54. Voicemail. At 10:03, he called from Melissa's phone. I didn't answer that either. The voicemail started calm and progressively got more frantic. The first one. Grandpa, I just received some legal documents. I think there's been a mistake. Can you call me back? The second one. Grandpa, this isn't funny. You can't just change the trust terms like this. I have rights. The third one left at 10:47. You're really going to do this? You're going to punish me because I said some things I didn't mean? This is insane. I listened to all 7 voicemails while sitting in my backyard drinking tea. Then I deleted them. On Thursday, Nathan showed up at my house. I watched him through the window as he got out of an Uber, wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000, carrying a leather briefcase I didn't recognize. He knocked on my door. I opened it. Grandpa, we need to talk. Come in. He followed me to the kitchen. I poured myself another cup of tea, but didn't offer him any. He stood there, briefcase in hand, looking around at my small, modest kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. I hired an attorney, he said. He says you can't do this. He says I have grounds to contest the trust modification. You can certainly try. Grandpa, please, I'm sorry about what I said at graduation. I was showing off in front of my friends. I didn't mean it. Nathan, sit down. He sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped him with his math homework when he was 12. The same table where we'd eaten countless meals together when his parents were too busy with work. Do you know why I set up that trust fund? I asked. To help me. To give me security. No. I set it up to teach you something. To give you a foundation, yes, but also to help you understand the weight of wealth. The responsibility that comes with it, the humility required to handle it well. Nathan's jaw tightened. So this is about teaching me a lesson. This is about giving you a chance to become someone worth trusting with $2 million. I have an MBA from Harvard. I work at Goldman Sachs. I think I know how to handle money. You know how to make money, Nathan. That's not the same as understanding its value. You told your friends I was pathetic because I took the subway. You told Melissa's parents I didn't understand modern finance. You've been living on $3,000 a month from me while telling everyone you saved aggressively from your analyst salary. I didn't know you were the one sending that money. You never asked where it came from. You just spent it. Nathan opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. My attorney says we can fight this. He says the milestones are unreasonable. Living on median income for 18 months? That's barely $60,000 a year in New York. I can't survive on that. 60 million Americans survive on that or less. That's not the point. That's exactly the point, Nathan. You think living on $60,000 a year is impossible because you've never had to do it. You've never had to make real choices about money because there's always been a safety net you didn't even know existed. Nathan's voice rose. So what do you want from me? You want me to grovel? You want me to say I'm sorry 100 times? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I embarrassed you at graduation. I'm sorry I said stupid things about you to my friends. Now can we please just go back to the original trust terms? I stood up and walked to my kitchen counter. I picked up an envelope I'd prepared and handed it to Nathan. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." He opened the envelope and pulled out a single check. It was made out to him for $50,000. "I don't understand." "That's your trust fund distribution for this year. The original terms said you'd receive the full amount at 30. Instead, I'm giving you $50,000 now, no strings attached, no milestones. It's yours." Nathan stared at the check. "But the documents you sent said, the milestones apply to the remaining 2.8 million. But this 50,000 is yours right now. You can use it however you want, invest it, spend it, save it. I won't judge you, and I won't track it." "Why?" "Because I want to see what you do with it. I want to see if you've learned anything from this conversation, or if you'll prove me right about why those milestones are necessary." Nathan held the check like it might disappear. "And if I complete the milestones, what then?" "Then you'll receive the full trust fund. And more importantly, you'll have earned it. You'll understand where it came from and what it means. And maybe you'll finally understand that the pathetic old man in the Kohl sport coat was never the problem." Nathan folded the check carefully and put it in his wallet. "What if I can't do it? What if 7 years isn't enough?" "Then $2 million goes to charity, and you'll still have your MBA, your job at Goldman Sachs, and the $50,000 in your wallet. You'll survive, Nathan. The question is whether you'll thrive." We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Nathan spoke, his voice quieter than before. "I really am sorry, Grandpa. Not just because of the trust fund. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for how I talked about you. You deserve better." "Yes, I did." "Can I ask you something? When did you decide to do this? When did you know you were going to change the trust?" "I thought about that graduation lawn, about standing there with my paper plate, listening to my grandson call me pathetic while his friends laughed. The moment you chose your image over your integrity, the moment you decided I was something to be ashamed of rather than someone who loved you enough to make you better." Nathan stood up to leave. At the door, he turned back. "The first milestone, 2 years of continuous employment with good performance reviews. When does that start?" "It starts the day you decide it starts. You tell Margaret when you're ready to begin." "What if I'm ready now?" I looked at my grandson, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Uncertainty, humility, maybe even the beginning of understanding.
Then I'll be here, Nathan, watching you succeed or watching you fail. Either way, I'll be here. He nodded and walked out to his waiting Uber. I watched him leave, then went back to my kitchen and poured myself another cup of tea. 3 years later, Nathan completed his 4th milestone. He's living in a studio apartment in Queens, volunteering at a youth financial literacy program on weekends, and, according to his performance reviews, he's one of the top analysts at Goldman Sachs. He drives a used Toyota, and he's learned to cook. He calls me every Sunday. We talk about his progress, about markets, about life. Last month, he asked me if I'd teach him how I built my portfolio over 40 years. We're meeting next week to start those lessons. The trust fund still has 3 years left on the clock. The money's still there, growing, waiting. But I don't think Nathan's focused on the money anymore. I think he's finally figured out what the trust fund was really about. It was never about the $2 million. It was about becoming someone worthy of it. And maybe, just maybe, he's getting there.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.